Suddenly feel like doing an after show. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna open up an app. It'll be on for a half hour. Let's see. Alright, so if you want to call in now, it's 605-472-5320. And, let me see what... So, we are, get on your mic again. Let me move these around.
Hello, test.
You are here for the after show.
Yeah, hey. I might be a regular on this thing.
Well, might be the only regular.
Hey, that's no problem. So today's show was actually pretty interesting.
I hope you don't mean the first 20 minutes of it.
Well, you know, any show can be a little rough at the start. The important thing with any show is...
Or last week.
The important with any show, even online, is just to keep going. Because even if, I always say it's the same when I did my, whenever I do like my late night readings online or such, no one might come, but at least it's there. And that's the important thing, is you're providing a service.
Of course, I mean, WTXN Games Forum 4 pretty much will give gamers a chance to be part of the whole. Well, you've seen those Sunday morning political. You've seen one of those Sunday morning political programs, right? Like
Oh,
Meet the
way
Press.
too much. Yeah, way too much.
Like Meet the Press, Face the Nation, all that.
Yeah.
And then either before or following that would be a local public affairs program done by the local station, which instead of doing the national stuff, usually focuses on local events. Like, I can't think of anything, but
I understand what you're talking about, though. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, this program is intended to be more like the local public affairs programs, not the national national Sunday morning talking heads.
That's cool, though. That's a great idea.
Now, as some of you might guess, I also do Game Center 40, though I haven't done it for a couple weeks because of the whole coronavirus thing. And that was our topic last week, which nobody attended.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Well, I think the shock of everything has kept a lot of people on the down low, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, I mean, being cooped up inside is it's no laughing matter.
No, it really isn't. It's a hard time, but we'll get through it.
Of course. I said in my editorial the other week. In fact, actually, the editorial's on the YouTube channel. If you go check it out, you'll see what I mean.
I will have to check it out then.
And by the way, for all you Ghost of the Hambone fans out there, I include a direct reference to that guy because he has denied the existence of COVID-19 outright.
Yeah, it's crazy times. But yeah, I kind of like this new format you've got with the discussion thing. That's kind of a neat idea.
Thank you. I intend to do this whenever Sundays I get the chance to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I hope it continues to be fairly successful in that regard.
Now, as for scheduling, how does 11:45 to 12:45 sound? Because it's gonna start at 12 Eastern.
Yeah, that works. That works pretty well.
Now, if take a look at the rules of the forum, I have 5 ground rules.
Mm-hmm.
And one is to make the conversation pertain to the subject at hand. For instance, next week you've actually given us a really good topic to discuss for it. We'll be discussing backwards compatibility next week in general. Number 2, there will be no bashing of any political parties during the program. So,
Yeah, keep politics out of it.
of course, you can't go and say, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I could see the two insults as actual examples, because
Yeah. Well,
but
this,
they include the shortening of the R word at the end of them.
ugh.
Number 3 will be no bashing of any politicians unless they happen to be in the news about the topic. But even then, don't bash them because of the political party. It's got to remain on the topic. And number 4, and I want to make sure this one is followed to the letter. There's got to be a minimum of 2 people in the chat room throughout the entire broadcast, and that's me included. So
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
now, have you seen the Namcot collection?
Namcot collection. Remind me which one that one is.
It's well, right now it's a collection of Namco games that they ported to the Famicom or made for the Famicom in a collection for the Nintendo Switch. It's available in Japan. I think it's available. It'll be available in Japan on June 18th. Or to Japanese Nintendo account holders. So, you got a Switch, you got a account connected to Japan's Nintendo servers, you can get the game.
Oh, cool. I've got one. I've got a Japanese account. I do indeed.
And another thing that was brought up was Netflix has announced that there will be a season 4 of the Castlevania series. Now, if the rumor is true and Sony does wind up buying it from Konami, hopefully Netflix will go through Sony Interactive Entertainment instead of Sony Pictures, which, if you compare Interactive Entertainment to Pictures, it's like comparing a very good person to a very incompetent one.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so. I am hoping.
And they're both part of the same conglomerate corporation. They're both marked Sony. One's tarnishing the reputation, the other's enhancing the reputation. So whatever gets tarnished by the movie part of it is eventually going to be shined over by the gaming segment. Alright. Is there anything else you want to talk about while we're in the after show?
Not particularly. I'm not sure what else to talk about.
Well, you were talking about modern gaming earlier, so let's go to a retro topic.
Okay.
Now, there's always a discussion of emulation versus original hardware. It happens for console games. It happens for arcade games. What's your my stance on the whole issue is that whatever is easier, you can go down that route. If emulation's easier at the moment, emulate it. If you have the original hardware on hand, you can play using the original hardware. If you got an emulator on hand, use the emulator. That's it. What's your stance on this particular issue?
Well, I actually pretty much agree with that, because there are games that are hard to get and hardware is hard to get. So if you have to emulate it, it's not the most it's not the nicest choice, of course, but if you have to, then sometimes you have to. It's sometimes it's just the way you can go with.
Now, someone has mentioned this on the Game Center 40 gaming stream, and it's particularly one for the regular Nintendo, but I happen to have one for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. It's the it's the EverDrive series of cartridges, which makes it a bit, which gives it the kind of original, which I don't know how to describe it, but at the same time it's both original hardware and emulation. But I think that's the easiest way I can put it at this moment.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, right now, both of the NES ones, the regular and the Pro, are pretty much priced out of my reach. As you've seen on on all three gaming streams, I don't have that many games, especially retro games. But I got many handheld games, and handheld games are the one thing I cannot stream because I don't have the mods or the hardware capable of sending their signals over to OBS. And this is probably where the emulation argument should come in, because if you can't stream on the original hardware, which for a lot of handheld consoles you pretty much can't unless you got, a mod or some sort of special hardware, unless you have one of those.
And of course there's the fact that there are some games which are almost impossible to get nowadays. So sometimes you really kind of don't have a choice in those matters. My view on emulation really usually is, it's not the most tactful thing, but it's really kind of a last choice, as it were, I'd say.
So it's a last resort option.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say for instance, and this is actually kind of true. I don't have a Famicom disk system.
Yeah, not most people don't. I don't think.
Right? There are some people in the U.S. who do, and there could have been a lot more if you just released the North American version of it. Because from what I've read, that was initially announced through, I don't know, whatever trade show it was. But it was announced and quietly canceled. We'll never know what the North American version could have looked like. But I imagine it would have boosted the Nintendo Entertainment System's hype by about 1 or 2 inches.
Yeah, I suppose so. Hey, did you know? Speaking of the Famicom Disk System, did you know that if you play the Famicom Nintendo Switch, the what was it? The Famicom Online for the Nintendo Switch, the version of Legend of Zelda they have on there is the Famicom Disk version, not the regular Famicom version.
You mean the regular 1986 and not the 92 re-release?
Yeah, the Famicom one, yeah.
That's actually kind of exciting. Unfortunately, I do not have Switch Online.
Yeah. Well, might be a good time nowadays to get it. The that means, by the way, that the music is of a higher quality on the Famicom version on that than it is in the NES version.
Just on a whim, I just searched up NES Disk System on Google. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a 1994 re-release, not 1992.
Yeah, but the Famicom Switch Online is something I do recommend if you can figure out the little thing with that. It's interesting to play some games that there are some games on it that were never released in the US, and there are some games they get on there that you don't get with the NES, like the original Fire Emblem is on there. As mind-bogglingly difficult as that game is.
How difficult is
Fire Emblem?
Yes.
Well, given the fact that one thing, I'm not good with strategy games, so that's a one against me. So it's very much a role-playing strategy game. So if you're not good with strategy games, it's yeah. Like with everything with Fire Emblem, the infamous you lose a person, you can never get them back is in play at that point. So it's a very unforgiving game in some regards. I mean, it's supposed to be pretty fun, but it's not a game I would say someone who casually plays and is not prepared for losing people to get involved in.
So it's like that meme. You die in the game, you die in real life. That's a sort of a meme.
Sort of. It. Oh yeah, I remember that. That was from a movie. I can't remember the name of the movie. I'm old enough to remember this stuff. But the game I've only played a little bit of it, and yeah, it's not a game to go into if you're not prepared for the chance that you might, that any mistake you make will have consequences, will have big consequences, and you can't just go back and fix it. I think it wasn't until much later in the Fire Emblem series that they added in like a casual mode to the games.
Casual mode, like let's see, like difficulty 25%.
Yeah, the casual mode, I think, if I recall, one of the things it adds in is the ability to regain any fallen ally. You can just heal them or whatever. In the regular mode, you cannot do that. Once they're gone, they're gone.
So they nerfed it down to Dragon Quest, basically.
Basically, it's a big controversy, I think, among fans if it was a good idea or not. I don't know which game it was though. I don't play a lot of things like Fire Emblem, so I'm not an expert on this sort of thing. But I do recall that they did that I do recall it was on one of the I think it was on one of the DS ones. Either one of the Game Boy Advance ones or one of the DS ones that they added that feature in. And if I recall, now don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, they did it for Western gamers. Because they were worried the whole difficulty with losing things would turn off Western gamers. Sort of like how with the whole
Go on. Anyways, I think they may have done that because any person over here on the U.S. shores worth their salt think, oh yes, I can just go and get this person, and this person healed up after they fall from battle, and I think they were too used. I think they were all too used to that by then. But the original mode is probably how you'd get the Dungeons and Dragons crowd.
Well, think of it rather like how we got Doki Doki Panic instead of Super Mario Bros. 2. It's sort of the same sort of thing. The worry that Western gamers, I believe, would not like the hard difficulty. But yeah, that's worth a kind of a play on the Famicom thing. Although, of course, it's all in Japanese, so if you can't read Japanese, it's much more difficult since the menus are all Japanese.
What can I say? We Americans like things easy.
Yeah.
We like them fed to us on a silver platter, even if we're only worthy of bronze.
I will tell you, I've played Super Mario Bros. 2, well, the Lost Levels thing, and I had a blast with it. It was fun.
Same here. I mean, let me look up the guy.
I always like playing as Luigi in the game, because I'm a Luigi guy, even if it makes it that much more harder.
Howard Phillips. is the guy responsible for making sure that it didn't reach the shores the first time around.
But we got out of it Super Mario Brothers 2, which is a fun game.
And if someone else has had their way, some person out there might have actually had the game from a contest, from a proposed contest.
Interesting.
But they didn't do it because too confusing.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I personally think that Lost Levels it's a great game too.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderfully fun game.
It's hard.
Oh,
but it's easy. No. It's hard, but it's easy. Is the best way to describe it.
It's hard, but it's easy. It is hard, but it is easy. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult, and I've never gotten that far in it. But I'm the sort of person who gets fun out of difficulty. I don't mind a hard video game as long as I've got some fun out of it.
I don't mind it as long as it's fair. And
it's I
don't mind it being hard as long as it's fair. And I keep hearing that a lot of these American-made games, they're hard and they're not fair.
Yeah, well, yeah. There are certainly a number of cheap games out there that don't play by the rules.
Now, granted, games from all regions do have their own it's hard and it's not fair type of game.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Have you taken warp zones in the game?
Which game? The
Lost Levels.
You know what? I am someone who doesn't tend to cheat. Well, I shouldn't say cheat. It's not cheating. I don't take the shortcuts. I just like to try and go through the entire level myself. I take that back. By the way, viewers, I'm not trying to say warp level thing is cheating. That was a flip of the tongue. If I want to see the rest levels, I will definitely take the
if you want to see everything but World 9.
Yeah.
Cause you got to clear the whole game to get to World 9. If you use a warp pipe, you've lost that chance.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same with me with Mario 2. I've never really used any of the warping tricks because I've always wanted to see what the other levels look like. And yeah, you can't see the rest of the levels without yeah. Well, you know.
By the way, there is an easy way to tell if the NES game you're seeing is emulated.
Oh,
if
really?
the overscan area is completely black on both sides, or on all four sides, maybe, but I'm going with two, left and right. If it's any color other than black, or really, if both sides are black, and it looks like the picture's been cut off at that section, that's emulated. But if it's a different color, that's definitely original hardware. color of the overscan area will be the color of the background.
That makes sense.
And for Super Nintendo, you pretty much can't tell.
No.
Because emulate or not, that overscan is always going to be black.
Yeah.
And the Sega Genesis, actually, emulation on Genesis has gotten to the point where even it shows the color border. There's actually an emulator on the Wii for the Sega Genesis, and it shows the color border.
That's interesting.
Shows it pretty well. So what works for the NES may not work for the Genesis, and will not work for the Super Nintendo, because you pretty much can't tell unless someone's holding a controller in their hand and the actual console in front of their face. Both of which I've had to do. I've also had to prove it was original hardware, even though everyone kind of basically knew it. But I just wanted to insert that very surefire way that you know it was actual hardware, is that I took the cartridge out. So if you've got any naysayers, if you're playing on original hardware and you've got naysayers saying, no, that's emulation, just take the cartridge out. And if you got the blinking light win, it'll be a bit difficult, but you can get it out. Although, if you could take the top off the console and then just push it out from there, from the back, that will work too.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Because that's currently my go-to method for getting Hyperkin's useless Famicom converter out. I call it useless because, I think I've explained this 3 times. I don't mind explaining it again. But pulling it out by the ribbon, it got stuck in the blinking light win.
Oh, jeez.
And by the way, this was on a live stream too, where I was taking out the original cartridge connector and putting in the blinking light win. So it's the same stream. It just happens a little later while I was testing out a few games. So you will definitely be able to catch it.
Oh, that's interesting.
May Hyperkin Don't Make This Ever Again become a meme. Which I now hear they're coming out with some sort of Game Boy emulation console.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something that was once an April Fool's prank has now become real again. And it's the case for their Hyperkin. Let me look it up. Because I have already forgotten what the name was supposed to be. It wasn't the adapter that they had for smartphones. Oh, there it is. The Retron Junior. They're calling it the Retron Junior.
Oh.
you know how I originally, you know which article I originally saw this on?
What?
I saw it on a site that basically said Hyperkin gives a middle finger to gamers on their latest console, and then they showed the side of the box, which, well, if you take a look at the picture, in a kind of way, it does sort of resemble that gesture. At first I thought, oh great, another Atari console they're coming out with. But no, this is Game Boy.
That's interesting.
And they're marketing it as a premium one, so we might just stick to the Super Game Boy for, Game Boy colorless games for now. Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance will have to wait until we have a GameCube.
Yes.
or until, there's enough money to afford whatever tiny monstrosity it is. And it does look like a tiny monstrosity.
Yeah.
Now, let me talk a bit about my streaming standards for a moment.
Okay.
Now, I broadcast all my shows in 480p, which I get it. I completely get it. That's not high definition. You don't want a video that's... And I'm talking in general, not you. I'm talking about people in general. You would rather have HD, 720p, 1080i, 4K is now the big standard.
Oh, yeah.
And neither my last tower nor this tower can output a good, continuous 720p picture for a stream.
Really?
Yeah, 480 tends to be my sweet spot for broadcasting. And in case no one remembers any of this, it's been a standard for many years. It's just that for most of that time it was in an interlaced format. Now, a lot of our gaming consoles output a little tricky signal that makes our TVs draw about half the lines before going back and drawing that exact same half again. It's called 240p. Now, for people that don't know how good my composite looks, and it looks brilliant. I've actually been told on stream that my composite is pretty good, and I can chalk that down to the fact that my signal, yeah, it may not be as robust as other people would want it to be. But that's because of some of the OBS settings I've set for it, I mean, for retro games, there's a setting called retro deinterlacing. You set that bottom field first because we're in NTSC land. It draws frames 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 before going back and doing 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And when I have to capture footage to the computer, I'll always catch the signal in its completely interlaced format, and I will record it in progressive frames, and then I will take it to my video editor, and I'll tell it to interpret it as a bottom field first footage, because that's what it truly is. Now, there are some people that went the route of actually pulling it through a composite to HDMI converter, which would de-interlace the signal for them, but it's not a complete de-interlace, as their method does have hiccups. Well, mine's got hiccups too. I mean, not every method is perfect.
Well, yeah. That's a given.
I mean, my method will capture the 480i signal as it was intended after, some bit of trickery on the video editor side. But the drawback is that you're limited to those 480 lines, or if you're using the capture card I've been using, about 476. And the thing is that when I'm capturing, I don't zoom in. I don't zoom in on the picture. I will if the composite is coming from my VHS-C camera to the TV and then into the computer. I'll zoom it in if it's like that and it's on my face and it's part of the live stream. You'll note that earlier in March, I did a poll asking whether I should do Game Center 40 in 4:3, and overwhelmingly the consensus was doing 16:9. So now I'm stuck with doing a one camera layout until I can get a second one, and even then I may have to plug it into another USB hub, because a set of two will only take one camera.
That makes sense.
Now there's... Now, you may have noticed the backgrounds I have behind me on the green screen on Game Center 40. Those are recreations from whatever the sets used to look like in that era. Yes, they are recreations of an actual news set from a retro time period. And recently, I've taken to doing another one.
Huh.
This time we're going for what might be the 1981 News Center 40 set. A recreation. It's a basic recreation, so no major details will be recreated.
Huh.
But I've actually found the font that was used. And I've watched the last thing on the internet. I've watched the last thing that WMGM ever did before turning into basically a short-lived 2-network, one for each year station, independent, Univision-owned, etc., etc., etc. The last thing they did was called News Center 40, The Stories Behind the Station, and some of the clips shown are very good. And through those clips, we've got to see what some of the old sets look like, even before I was born. Excuse me. Now, you could find this piece of information bitter pill to swallow, but when I lived in Wildwood, there was one thing I did not know until, later on in my life here in Delaware. But it turns out that where I lived in Wildwood, it was less than 15 miles away. Actually, it was more like less than 12 miles. No way. Wildwood was exit 4 off the Garden State Parkway. Swainton was exit 14, I think. So where I lived in Wildwood, apparently it was about 10 miles away from the original studio that they conducted those broadcasts in, until a certain point where they moved to Atlanta, where they moved the studio side operations to Atlantic County.
That's interesting.
That was actually interesting for me too, because you can actually find the information on a Facebook group full of old alumni, and it's public, I think. I don't think you can join the group unless you actually worked there. I never did, but then again, I've been living in Delaware since 2005. But you can find out some of this information either through that documentary or through that Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I've taken the liberty to recreate some of that stuff for Game Center 40, which is supposed to be kind of it's kind of a tribute from one native South Jersey to a bunch of others. That was mean pointing. It was meant to be a nice pointing. we've moved from gaming to local stations. Well, that's true. You ever known of any local stations nearby?
Not really. We don't have anything. The nearest local station is in St. Paul, the capital. I mean, I've driven by the local stations, but I don't know where the nearest one is at all.
You know, through all the searching for anything I could find, I've actually come across some news opens for a local Gannett station in Minneapolis, St. Paul. News openings, not
Yep.
in case someone got confused about the word opening. And there's actually there are actually two interesting pieces of music that was used in some of the opens on that video that really sound like they should come to game. They really sound like they should be on Game Center 40. The first one is and that's the second one. It actually came immediately after that one. It sounded like some sort of 80s, 90s superhero music synth.
Huh.
Those sound like some good tunes that really should come to Game Center 40. And then there was New York's own 11, which, fun fact, we actually did get in South Jersey.
Well, Jersey is close to New York, so that kind of makes sense.
Well, it would only make sense if you're in northern New Jersey. If you're in northern New Jersey, you can pretty much get it over the air. Here in South Jersey, forget about it. You cannot get Channel 11 over the air in South Jersey. You can get it on cable though. And that means when I was a kid we had two WB stations. We had 17, Philadelphia, 11, New York.
Huh.
And their news music history is actually something too, something good to behold. It sounds like there are some good musical scores that should be on Game Center 40.
Huh.
Now whether they could be cleared by YouTube and I don't get a claim on them, that remains to be seen, Because let me go back to the first theme I used for Game Center 40. It was it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, which Channel 11 also used in the 70s.
That's interesting.
Guess what?
What?
I'm sure you might not have known this, but because of that piece of music, it got copyright claimed.
Huh.
Yep, some Game Center 40s just don't survive the reach of YouTube. And so I went with a more familiar theme, one that's actually familiar to a lot of us South Jerseyans, but well, that would be for the ending theme. But for the opening, I decided to go with one of TV Tokyo's own TXN News opening musics.
Mm-hmm.
The one that goes da 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 da
da. Cool.
There's a bunch of iconic theme music. Some news stations have played the best of the best. Some have played I guess some would call them the worst of the best, or the worst of the worst, or Let's see here. Really, nothing else. No, we don't have callers. You might have noticed the call now thing on the below. It'll be I think we've run out of things to talk about on this Sunday.
Yeah, I think we've kind of reached that point.
Alright. You see the people on the right?
Mm-hmm.
Ignore Discord, ignore Dino. But I was kind of hoping those three would join in on the conversation. But, they might be busy.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe in April, mid to late April, I might. This isn't a guarantee. But I might restart the whole thing.
Okay.
Now you may have noticed some commercials in the stream. We are going to bring that authentic TV viewing experience to our programs. Mm-hmm. But one thing though, they're not going to be in the replays.
Okay.
I was gonna make sure that when I download them from YouTube, I'm getting the pure 480 stream, because when you download from a stream, you only get the 360 if it's automatic.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure you'll like this one, but my mind's always coming up with crazy and weird ideas for openings, you know. And I actually thought up of a closing for something I may do on election day. So, everyone knows, you know, the Hinamaru of the Japanese flag, the Japanese flag. Well, specifically the naval one with the shining rays.
Yeah.
Well, I actually made a easy animation. It was made in Blender, but for this ending animation, I've essentially made a Stars and Stripes version of it, where you've got the blue Hinamaru with all 50 stars inside.
Huh.
Because, you know, this is America, and it's election day we're talking about. It's the American civic. It's your American duty to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But I was stuck on how I could get 7 red rays and 6 white rays. You know, because our flag has 13 stripes.
Yep.
I was thinking about how would that be replicated.
Oh, good point.
And thing is, those rays could only go. I tried doing 7-6, and it just wound up being 7-7. And if you take away one white stripe and combine the 2 red, that becomes 6-6. So that's not going to happen. So what I eventually went for in that design was 13 red, 13 white. And it should be in my mega folder. Let me find it and put it in as a media source. And then once it's loaded, I'm gonna mute it a bit because there it is. I went for an arrangement of 13 for the original 13, 12, 11, 8, 5, 1. And that video you just saw right there was our American Hinamaru. A combination of both Japan's Asahi-san, which is used on their naval flag and some other flags, and our Stars and Stripes. I call it a good blend of 2 peaceful symbols. believe both are symbols of freedom. Sorry, I did not have my shift key held down for the duration of that entire speech. Hopefully, you should have heard me on the... Well, I guess I'm the only one watching. But what you saw in the video... I have to repeat it again for him. What you saw in the video was our homemade version, the American Hinomaru. It's a combination of two symbols of freedom. And although some people may not consider either of them to be symbols of freedom, there are certainly people out there who don't consider the Hinomaru to be a symbol of freedom. And there are some out there that don't consider the Stars and Stripes to be symbols of freedom. Mm-hmm. But it's a combination of both, and I would like to say that it is a good combination.
Yeah.
You got the 13 red stripes representing the original 13 colonies. You got the 50 stars and the blue sun that represent our 50 states. Hopefully I'll get to show this again on election day with credits, because that's what I plan to use the animation for. And don't worry, I do plan to use old music in broadcasts, music that people don't really monetize that much.
Yeah.
Now, it's 2:51. We're nearing 3 o'clock. And I cannot confirm and I cannot deny a stream on Twitch later. I will get out the Wii emulation, and I could get it out. That's not a will. Mm-hmm. That's a could.
Yeah.
Because on the other hand, I could just be on Discord for the rest of the night. But the one thing that's a given is that we will definitely do WTXN Games Forum 40 again.
Okay. It was fun.
That'll be next Sunday, April 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern, noon. Right here on the WTXN YouTube channel. I'd like to thank you all thank all of you for being in the after show. Well, I guess I'd like to thank all one of you for being in the after show with me. Hopefully we can get some more people to join in. And I am going to leave you off with... our American Hinomaru.
Good evening from TV 40.